Hello students, welcome back. Today we will discuss about the fissure in ano. So fissure in ano is a longitudinal split in the anoderm of the distal anal canal which extends from the anal verge proximally up to the dentate line. Now students, in this definition, the three words which are important are the anoderm, dentate line and the anal verge. Now students, what is anoderm? So the difference between the anoderm and the true skin is that true skin has a hair follicles and the sweat glands, while the anoderm has no hair follicles and the sweat glands, and that's why anoderm is also called as a modified skin. Then the anal verge. Anal verge, it is a mucocutaneous junction, and the dentate line. So students, for the dentate line, we will see this diagram. Now in this diagram, students, the length of the anal canal is about 3 to 4 centimeter. So in different books, the length has mentioned in different books there are different lengths, but usually it is 3.5 to or 4 centimeter. Now the anal canal is divided into upper half and the lower half. So in the upper half of the anal canal, the mucosal folds, they are arranged longitudinally. So these are called as the anal columns of the Morgagni. And these anal columns of the Morgagni, they are separated from each other. They are called as the anal sinuses. And below this, there are the anal crypts. So the dentate line is situated just above the anal crypts. So students, dentate line is very important because most of the diseases in the anal canal, they start at the dentate line. So students, now we have seen the definition. So what the definition has mentioned, fissure in ano is a longitudinal split in the anoderm which extends from the anal verge distally up to the dentate line proximally. Now students, see in this diagram, this is the dentate line and this is the anal verge. So the fissure is here. So the fissure is in between the dentate line and the anal verge, and it is a longitudinal split. Then students, difference between the upper and lower half of the anal canal, above the dentate line and below the dentate line. Above the dentate line, it is endodermal in origin, and below the dentate line, it is ectodermal in origin. Above the dentate line, it is lined by the columnar epithelium, and below the dentate line, it is lined by the squamous epithelium. Above the dentate line, it is supplied by the superior rectal artery. Below the dentate line, middle and the inferior rectal artery. Then above the dentate line, the venous drainage is by the superior rectal vein, and it enters into the portal circulation, and the middle and the inferior rectal veins drains into the systemic circulation. So this is below the dentate line. Then above the dentate line, the lymphatic drainage goes to the internalia group of lymph nodes, and below the dentate line, it goes to the superficial inguinal lymph nodes. Then above the dentate line, it is innervated by the autonomic nervous system, and below the dentate line, there is a somatic innervation. Now students, as per the definition, the fissure is a longitudinal split in the anoderm which is in between the dentate line and the anoderm. So it is below the dentate line, and below the dentate line there is a somatic innervation. So the anoderm is richly supplied by the nerves, and because of this, the fissure is highly painful. So the lesions which are below the dentate line, they are painful, and the lesions which are above the dentate line, they are painless. So that's why the fissure is more painful. Now the students, etiology of the fissure in ano. So every book has mentioned exact etiology is not known. So that is very correct. But then constipation is considered as the primary and sole factor for initiation of the fissure. So the constipation is considered as a primary more important factor. Now other predisposing factors. The more commonly seen predisposing factor is the passage of hard stool. So that is the usual history given by the patient. Then prolonged diarrhea, previous surgery of the anal canal, childbirth in case of childbirth leading to fissure in ano in females, and usually these fissures are anterior fissures. Then anal sphincter hypertonia, because of this there is increased resting anal pressure because of this anal sphincter hypertonia, and which subsequently leads to mucosal ischemia. So these are the etiological factors. Exact etiology is not known, but these are the predisposing factors for fissure in ano. Then classification of the fissure in ano. Depending upon the duration, the fissures are classified into acute fissure and chronic fissure. Acute fissure when the duration of symptoms less than 6 weeks, and the chronic fissure duration of symptoms more than 6 weeks. Then depending upon the location, the fissures are divided into typical fissures and the atypical fissures. Typical fissures, they are usually located in the posterior or anterior midline, and the atypical fissures, they can occur anywhere in the anal canal. Now see this diagram. So this is the posterior part and this is the anterior part. So the typical fissures, they are situated in the anterior midline and posterior midline, and the atypical fissures, they are laterally, or they can occur anywhere in the anal canal. Then location of the fissures. Now students, see, most of the fissures, they are located in the midline. So 90% of the fissures, they are located in the midline. Then 10% of the fissures, they are located in the anterior midline, and the remaining less than 1% fissures, they are located in the lateral aspect of the anal canal. Now see this diagram. So posteriorly 90% of the fissures, they are located in the posterior midline, 10% of the fissures, they are located in the anterior midline, and these are the lateral fissures, less than 1% of the patients. So these are also called as the atypical fissures. Anterior midline and posterior midline, typical fissures. Now students, as the fissures, they are most commonly located in the posterior midline. So why this is so? Why the fissures, they are more common in the posterior midline? So the possible explanation for this is the anoderm is more adherent to the underlying tissue in the posterior midline. More adherent means it is less elastic. So the anoderm is less elastic in the posterior midline. Then the shearing forces acting in the posterior midline during defecation. So this is the second possible reason. Then blood supply to the anoderm at the posterior midline is significantly low, and the increased density of the longitudinal muscle extensions in the region of the anal circumference. So these are the four possible reasons why the fissures are more common in the posterior midline. Now students, see this diagram. Again, one of the explanation for why fissures are more common in posterior midline is this. Now see in this diagram. So this is the internal sphincter. So this is the internal sphincter, and this is the external sphincter. So now see, this is the anterior midline and this is the posterior midline. So in the anterior midline and the posterior midline, the external sphincter, it does not support the anal canal, and that may be the reason why the fissures are more common in anterior midline and posterior midline. So this is one of the explanation for more common location of the fissure in posterior midline. Now students, clinical presentation of the patient or clinical features. How the patient having a fissure in ano presents. Patient presents with the pain during defecation, and it is the tearing type of pain. As the patient explains, it is a tearing type of pain, and the pain lasts for several hours after defecation. So that is the typical history. Then bleeding during defecation. So it is a bright red blood, and usually there is a streak of blood on the hard fecal matter. Then mucus discharge and constipation. So these are the symptoms how the patient presents. So what happens students, because patient has a severe pain and bleeding during defecation, so patient avoids defecation. Because of this there is a constipation, but patient gives a history that there is a continuous pain even after defecation for 3 to 4 hours, 5 hours, and that's why patient gets irritated. Then students, how to diagnose the fissure in ano. Fissure in ano is a very common surgical condition. You can get number of patients in the OPD. So how to diagnose this? One is the history given by the patient. Patient gives a history of pain and bleeding during defecation, and the pain it lasts for several hours after defecation. Then physical examination of the patient, that is the perianal examination of the patient. So we will give the left lateral position to the patient and we will examine the perianal region. So what happens on inspection, the fissure is visible after gently separating the buttocks. So just separate the buttocks and you will see the ulcer or fissure in the anal region or in the anal verge in the posterior midline. That is the most common site of the fissure. Now the most important thing in this patient is the digital rectal examination and the proctoscopy. It should not be done in patient with acute fissure in ano because it aggravates the pain. Students, this is very important. We should not do digital rectal examination or per rectal examination and proctoscopy in these patients. Then once we diagnose that it is a case of acute fissure in ano, then what we do, we will advise the treatment to the patient. Now the treatment depends upon whether it is a simple fissure or complicated fissure. So students, complicated fissures are those fissures which are associated with other perianal pathologies like fistula, hemorrhoids, condyloma, abscess, and the other diseases like Crohn's disease, tuberculosis, immunocompromised patient. So these are the complicated fissures. Now we will go to the management of the simple fissure in ano. Now students, the treatment of acute fissure in ano is divided into conservative line of treatment and operative treatment. Now what is the aim of the conservative line of treatment? The conservative line of treatment, the aim of this treatment is to break this cycle. Now what is this cycle? See students, pain, there is a pain, and because of that pain there is a spasm of the internal sphincter. Once there is a spasm of the internal sphincter, because of this there is a increased resting anal pressure, and because of the increased resting anal pressure there is a ischemia, and ischemia again it leads to the non-healing of the ulcer and there is a pain. So students, our aim or the aim of the treatment in such patients is to break this cycle. Now students, how to break this cycle? Now see how we advise the treatment to the patient. Now students, see first stool softeners. Now in the etiology of the fissure in ano, we have seen the most important predisposing factor is the passage of the hard stool, and because of the passage of the hard stool there is a tear in the distal anoderm, that is the fissure. So we are advising stool softeners to the patient. Stool softeners are the liquid paraffin. So this is the cremaphin syrup that is available in the market. But students, here we are not doing any advertisement of any product. But what I think, when you see, you will remember in a better way. And that's why I have given these pictures. This is not for the advertisement. This is for much better understanding. Now see students, the liquid paraffin, so it softs the stool, and because of the softening of the stool, it minimizes the trauma to the fissure. So first thing is the stool softener. Then stool bulking agents. Stool bulking agents such as the psyllium, bran, and the fiber. What they do? They draw the water into the stool, changing its consistency, and therefore they prevent the formation of hard stool and cause sustained trauma to the anal canal. So stool bulking agents say they changes the consistency of the stool, and because of this there is a less trauma to the patient. So these are the stool bulking agents. They are again available commercially, but in India there is no need to advise such commercial products, because Indian diet is already contains is a high fiber diet. So we will advise to the patient, take the green leafy vegetables and fibrous fruits which can form the bulk. So this is for understanding students. Psyllium husk, that is a stool bulking agent which is available commercially in the market. Then third one is the seeds bath. So what is done in the seeds bath? So we will advise the patient to take a warm water in the tub. So take the warm water in the tub and sit in that water for 15 to 20 minutes, or add this antiseptic solution, that is the povidone iodine, to this and sit in the tub for 15 to 20 minutes. So this is a seeds bath. So it has a soothing effect and it reduces pain also. So we will advise the patient to take the seeds bath 2 to 3 times a day. Then local anesthetic jelly. So local anesthetic jelly, we have seen the vicious cycle, pain, spasm, ischemia. So to relieve the pain, we are giving the local anesthetic jelly, that is lignocaine jelly. Again, this product is available in the market, but students, you will better understand the local anesthetics like xylocaine, lignocaine. So they will reduce the pain, and that's why we are advising to apply the local anesthetics in the anal region just before the evacuation and after before the evacuation and after the evacuation, 2 to 3 times a day. Then other, as there is a infection, we advise antibiotics and analgesics. So there are a number of antibiotics: ciprofloxacin, ofloxacin, metronidazole, etc. And the analgesics, there are a number of analgesic preparations in the market. The market is flooded with the analgesics and antibiotics. So we will advise the antibiotics and analgesics. So students, now see what we have advised to the patient. So in acute treatment, so in the treatment for acute fissure in ano, we have advised the stool softeners, we have advised the bulk forming agents, seeds bath, local anesthetic cream, antibiotics and analgesics. So we will advise this treatment to the patient having acute fissure in ano. So it is a conservative treatment and it is advised for 4 to 6 weeks. So with this treatment, majority of the fissures, 87% of the fissures, they heal with conservative line of treatment. So this is the treatment for the acute fissure in ano. Most of the fissures, they heal with this type of treatment. Now students, what about the chronic fissure in ano? So which fissures are called as the chronic fissures? We have seen students types of the fissures depending upon the duration. Acute fissures, the duration is less than 6 weeks. So in chronic fissure, duration is more than 6 weeks. Then it is not responding to the conservative line of treatment. Presence of external skin tag, or that is called as a sentinel pile. Presence of hypertrophied anal papilla internally, and the fibers of the internal sphincter, they are exposed as the floor of the at the floor of the fissure. So these are the features. So these are the features of a chronic fissure in ano. Now see students, you will better understand in this diagram what is the difference between the acute and chronic fissure in ano. Now see students, in chronic fissure in ano, it is characterized by, so see this. So this is called as the sentinel tag or skin tag, and it is present externally. Then another is, this is called as the hypertrophied anal papilla. So students, this is hypertrophied anal papilla which is present internally, and this is the fissure. So in this fissure you see the internal fibers of the internal sphincter, they are visible. But see in this diagram, there is no such skin tag or sentinel tag externally. There is no such hypertrophied anal papilla internally. And see, the ulcer is superficial, not deep. So students, this is the difference between the acute fissure in ano and chronic fissure in ano. Sometimes students, patient gives the false history, whether it is acute or chronic. On history, there may be chances that patient gives less duration, but on clinical examination or examination of the perianal region, we will be 100% sure that whether it is a chronic fissure or whether it is a acute fissure. So whenever you see the skin tag, or it is called as a sentinel tag externally, then it is a case of chronic fissure in ano. This is the hypertrophied anal papilla. This is present internally. We cannot see it from outside, but we can see this is a skin tag or sentinel pile. So from these students, we will be sure shot, we will diagnose whether it is a acute fissure or chronic fissure. Now see this diagram. So in this diagram, so this is the, what is this students? This is a skin tag or sentinel tag, and it is present externally. And this is the hypertrophied anal papilla. This is present internally, but we cannot see it from outside. So students, this is the external skin tag or sentinel tag. It should not be confused with the hemorrhoids. This is very important. Skin tag or sentinel tag, it should not be confused with the hemorrhoid. Then students, pathophysiology of chronic fissure. So what is the pathophysiology? Patient presents with the history of pain. So this is the pathophysiology. So there is a passage of a hard stool and trauma to the distal anoderm. Because of the trauma, there is a tear in the distal anoderm. So it is a superficial tear, acute fissure in ano. Because there is a tear, it leads to the pain. Because of pain, there is a spasm of the internal anal sphincter. Because of the spasm, it leads to high resting anal pressure. And because of this, there is a reduced anodermal blood flow. Reduced blood flow, it leads to the local ischemia, and local ischemia, it leads to poor healing of the fissure, and again the same cycle is repeated. So students, because of the local ischemia, there is a improper healing of the ulcer. You all know the various factors affecting the wound healing. So ischemia is one of the factor which affects the wound healing, and this mechanism, there is a repeated breaking of the ulcer and repeated healing of the ulcer, and it leads to the chronicity. Now students, treatment of chronic fissure in ano. So the treatment of the chronic fissure in ano is again divided into non-surgical and the surgical. So in non-surgical treatment, we are using the pharmacological agents, and these agents they cause the chemical sphincterotomy, and this is called as the reversible chemical sphincterotomy. And these agents are the nitric oxide donors, calcium channel blockers, and the botulinum toxin injection. In nitric oxide donors, we have nitroglycerin ointment 0.2%, diltiazem ointment 2%. In calcium channel blockers, we have the ointments containing nifedipine, and botulinum toxin injection, we have injection botulinum toxin A. And the surgical treatment is the subcutaneous partial lateral internal sphincterotomy. Again, it has open and close technique. So students, first we will give the non-surgical treatment, and we are using the pharmacological agents. First is the nitric oxide donors. Now see students, this is the nitric oxide donor. So this is the nitroglycerin ointment. It is a 2% nitroglycerin ointment. It is available. So what is nitric oxide? In students, see, whenever there is a contraction of the muscle, so there is a motor end plate where the nerve and the muscle they meet, neuromuscular junction. And in the neuromuscular junction, whenever there is a passage of the nerve impulse, there is a release of the neurotransmitters. So the neurotransmitters are of two types. One is the acetylcholine and the adrenaline. But students, in this internal sphincter where the nerves and the sphincter muscle meets, there is a release of different type of a neurotransmitter. This is called as a nitric oxide, and this nitric oxide, it is a neurotransmitter which is released at the neuromuscular junction in internal anal sphincter, which causes relaxation of the internal sphincter. So if you go through the books in the belly, it has been mentioned NANC. NANC means non or noradrenergic and non or norcholinergic. So NANC means noradrenergic, non-cholinergic. So there is no release of adrenaline, no release of acetylcholine. So there is a release of nitric oxide, which is a neurotransmitter, and it causes the relaxation of the internal sphincter. So students, how it acts? The topical application of nitroglycerin, it causes relaxation of the internal sphincter because it is a nitric oxide donor, and it reduces the resting anal pressure, which increases blood flow and promotes the healing. That means we are breaking the cycle. Spasm, we are relieving the spasm of the internal sphincter, and once the spasm is relieved, there is a decreased resting anal pressure, and because of the decreased resting anal pressure, there is a increased blood flow. The perfusion is more. Now what is the side effect of this ointment? So it leads to the severe headache. Now students, how to minimize this headache? So we will advise the patient, while applying this ointment, we will advise the patient to lie down to minimize the headache. And we will advise the patient to apply this ointment to the anal verge twice daily before and after evacuation for 4 to 6 weeks. But the treatment duration depends upon the response of the patient to the treatment. So this is nitric oxide donor nitroglycerin ointment. Then the next is the calcium channel blockers. Now students, see, for your better understanding, I have given these pictures. These are the various ointments. At present they are available in the market. Now see, this is the ointment which contains the nifedipine. So it is a calcium channel blocker. So calcium channel blocker, they causes relaxation of the internal sphincter by blocking the calcium influx into the smooth muscle cell cytoplasm. So these are causing the relaxation of the sphincter, and after the treatment is over, again the internal sphincter gets the tone back, and that's why they are called as the reversible chemical spectrotomy. So these are the pharmacological agents, they causes the reversible chemical spectrotomy. Chemical spectrotomy means we are applying the chemicals like nitroglycerin ointment, we are applying the nifedipine ointment. That's why they are called as the chemical spectrotomy agents. Now students, next is the injection Botox or botulinum toxin type A. So botulinum toxin, it is a neurotoxin or neurotoxic protein. It is produced by the bacterium Clostridium botulinum and the related species. So it is a exotoxin and it is produced by the Clostridium botulinum. So students, you might have read in your microbiology book Anand Narayan what they have mentioned. 1 kilogram of this Clostridium botulinum toxin is sufficient to kill all the living organisms on the earth. So what it indicates? It is a very toxic substance, very toxic neurotoxin, and we are using this for the treatment. Now see students, how this botulinum toxin it acts. So this botulinum toxin, it prevents the release of neurotransmitter acetylcholine from the axon ends at the neuromuscular junction, and as it is not released, it leads to the flaccid paralysis of the internal sphincter. So botulinum toxin, it prevents the release of neurotransmitter acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junction and it leads to the flaccid paralysis of the internal sphincter. And as there is a paralysis of the internal sphincter, the resting anal pressure decreased, again blood flow increased, and which helps promotes the healing of the fissure. Now how this botulinum toxin is injected? So usually what toxin, there are different types of the botulinum A, B, but botulinum toxin A is used for this purpose. So it is a type A toxin. Then it is injected in the intersphincteric groove on both sides of the fissure, or some studies have mentioned that it is directly injected into the internal sphincter. Now the dose is 20 units on each side of the fissure. Again there are controversies about the how much dose should be given and how much should be injected, but as usual or in general 20 units on each side of the fissure is injected in the intersphincteric groove, or sometimes the high dose circumferential injection of this botulinum toxin is given. So this is 100 units. Then the action of this botulinum toxin, it remains for 3 to 4 months. This is very important. So the action, it remains for the 3 to 4 months, and within this 3 to 4 months, because of the relaxation or flaccid paralysis of the internal sphincter, it leads to healing of the fissure. So by giving the botulinum toxin A, the fissure healing rate is 60 to 80%. Now there are some complications of this Botox injection or botulinum toxin injection. Transient incontinence to the flatus and the stool, and sometimes perianal hematoma, but they are not very common side effects. They are seen in some patients, and the disadvantage is that the high cost of the treatment. So this is the disadvantage of this Botox injection. Now students, there is one more condition in our surgical practice, that is called as the achalasia cardia. In achalasia cardia, there is a failure of relaxation of the lower esophageal sphincter, and here also botulinum toxin injection is used. So this is another surgical condition, achalasia cardia, where botulinum toxin injection is used. Remember this students. Now after this non-surgical treatment, so the non-surgical treatment, they are directed to relax the sphincters, and that's why these pharmacological agents, they are called as the chemical sphincterotomy agents. Now students, Another type of treatment is the surgical treatment for chronic fissure in ano, and these are the options: internal sphincterotomy, advancement flaps, fissurectomy, and Lord's anal dilatation. And the most commonly performed operation for the chronic fissure in ano is the internal sphincterotomy. That is the gold standard treatment for chronic fissure in ano. Again, there are two techniques: open technique, which is described by the Notaras, and the closed technique. And the others are the advancement flaps, fissurectomy, Lord's anal dilatation. So one by one, students, we will see. Last time also, students, I have told preparation of the patient of surgery. So for preparation of any patient of the surgery, we need some investigations, and these are called as the laboratory investigations. We need the CBC, complete blood count, blood sugar level, creatinine level, bleeding time and clotting time, chest X-ray, ECG, blood pressure measurement of the patient. And for any surgery, consent of the patient is very important. We should tell the patient what are the complications which will occur in this patient or in this procedure. Now we will go to the lateral internal sphincterotomy. Now see the students, this is the position of the patient. So there are two positions. One is the lithotomy position and the prone jackknife position. So this is the supine position. Legs are separated, flexed and supported in raised stirrups. So these are the stirrups and the legs are fixed, flexed and raised. And this is the prone jackknife position. So this is the prone position, and the head and the feet, this is the head and feet end, they are at the lower level. So the position is lithotomy position or prone jackknife position. And the anesthesia, this procedure, that is partial lateral internal sphincterotomy, it is carried out either in local anesthesia or spinal anesthesia or general anesthesia also. Now the procedure. So the incision, radial skin incision, which is 2.5 cm in length, is made at the anal verge over the free edge of the internal sphincter at 3 o'clock position. Now students, there are two incisions. One is the radial and other is the circumferential skin incisions. Circumferential skin incisions are associated with shorter healing time than radial incisions, but it depends upon the choice of the surgeon. So we should take radial skin incision or we can take the circumferential skin incision at the anal verge. Now after taking the skin incision, the internal sphincter is exposed. Now how to identify the internal sphincter? In the books it has mentioned it is pearly white in color. So by this we will identify the external sphincter. Now the students, the very important the step is the extent of the sphincterotomy. After exposure of the sphincter, how much sphincter we should divide, that is very important, because if we divide excess sphincter, it will lead to incontinence, and if we do the inadequate division of the sphincter, it will lead to persistence of the symptom or recurrence. So that means we should not divide more or we should not divide less. So this is very important. Now there are 2 points. One is division of the internal sphincter up to the dentate line. Now students, we have seen where is this fissure? Fissure is in between the dentate line and the anal verge. So how much we should divide the internal sphincter? Some says it should be divided up to the dentate line and some says it should be divided up to the apex of the fissure. So nowadays this is a recent trend that the fissure, it should be divided up to the apex of the fissure. So the internal sphincter is divided up to the apex of the fissure, and this is very important. Now students, see this diagram. This is given in one of the books. So this is the dentate line, this is the anal verge, and this is the radial incision or transverse incision taken at 3 o'clock. So after taking the incision, this is the internal sphincter which is lifted off with the hemostat, and after this the internal sphincter is divided with the knife. So this is the internal sphincterotomy. It is called as a subcutaneous partial because we are dividing the internal sphincter partially, not completely. That's why it is partial lateral internal sphincterotomy. And this is the open technique. Open technique means we are exposing the internal sphincter, and that's why it is called as the open technique, and it is described by Notaras. Then student, there is another technique that is called as a closed technique. So it is, this procedure is carried out in local anesthesia also, closed technique, closed internal sphincterotomy. Here also a small radial skin incision is made at the anal verge at the 3 o'clock. Then index finger of left hand is inserted into the anal canal and the intersphincteric groove is palpated. An 11 number blade, we call it as a stab knife. It is inserted in the intersphincteric plane parallel to the internal sphincter, and we should stay below the dentate line. Then the blade is rotated medially through 90 degree with its cutting edge perpendicular to the internal anal sphincter, and the lower 1/3 to lower half of the internal sphincter is divided and the hemostasis is achieved. Now see students, in this diagram you will see. So see first, this is the index finger of the left hand which is in the anal canal. This is, what is this? This is the external anal sphincter. This is the internal anal sphincter, and in between this internal and external anal sphincter there is a intersphincteric space, and now we have inserted this stab knife, that is 11 number blade, into the intersphincteric space which is parallel to the internal sphincter. Now students, this stab knife is rotated medially through 90 degree so that its cutting edge it faces to the finger which is in the anal canal, and then the sphincter is divided. So in this diagram you can see this is the sphincterotomy site. The sphincter is divided. So here students, we are not exposing the internal sphincter, and that's why it is called as the closed sphincterotomy. Now students, the very important point, why sphincterotomy should not be done in the posterior midline even though the fibers of the internal sphincter are exposed. Now see students, what are the characteristics of the chronic fissure? One of the character of the chronic fissure is the fibers of the internal sphincter, they are exposed in the floor of the fissure. Then why not to cut the fibers when they are already exposed? So the students, we want to prevent this deformity, that is called as the keyhole gutter deformity. Now see students, this is the chronic fissure. How to identify? This is the skin tag externally, and this is the hypertrophied anal papilla internally, and in here the fibers, they are exposed. Now why not to cut the fibers when they are already exposed? So students, we want to prevent this keyhole gutter deformity. Now see what happens. Keyhole deformities are a persistent groove in the midline following sphincter division that may result in a significant degree of anal seepage or incontinence. So keyhole, see students, this is the keyhole, and this upper part we can compare it with the, this is the anal canal, and this lower part with this. So when we cut the internal sphincter in the posterior midline, so it will lead to a groove here there is a groove, and through this groove Even if the anal canal, even if the anus is closed, there is a seepage of the feces and the flatus, and that's why we want to avoid this, and that's why the sphincter is not divided in the posterior midline. So students, here I want to tell you, when the procedure of internal sphincterotomy was first described by Eisenhammer, so he first divided the sphincter here in the posterior midline, and then there occurred such deformity, and after that the Notara has modified this technique by doing the sphincterotomy laterally at 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and that's why now it is called as a Notara's open sphincterotomy. So this is the deformity which we want to avoid. Now students, complications of the internal sphincterotomy. Every surgery has its own complication, whether it may be minor or major. So internal sphincterotomy has its own complications: hemorrhage, hematoma, perianal bruising, perianal abscess because of the infection, fistula formation, and the most important is the incontinence. If the sphincter is divided more, it leads to incontinence, and the condition of the patient becomes worse because there is no control over the stool and flatus. So that is very important. So the condition of the patient worsens, and that's why the division of the sphincter, length of how much length we should divide, is very important. Now the contraindications for the sphincterotomy. Sphincterotomy, it is contraindicated in female patients where decreased anorectal sensation and generally not ideal candidates for the internal sphincterotomy. That means elderly female patients where already the sphincter tone is not good. So in such candidates it is avoided because there are high chances of the incontinence. Now the another treatment option for chronic fissure in ano is the VY advancement flap. So students, there is not it is not necessary for your level to go the technical details of surgical procedure, but you should remember VY advancement flap, that is one of the treatment option for the chronic fissure in ano. So V-shaped incision is taken. Here is the fissure and V-shaped incision is taken, and this V-shaped flap is moved into the anal canal supported by the fat of the pedicle, and it is sutured to create a Y. So V-shaped incision is taken, and after closure it becomes Y. So it is a VY advancement flap. Now students, another option is the fissurectomy. So what is fissurectomy? Fissurectomy is nothing but the excision of the fissures. So the already, see, this is the fissure already there. We are dividing this fissure. So after division of the fissure, this is the wound. So by doing the fissurectomy, we are converting this wound into acute ulcer. So the chronic ulcer, chronic fissure is a chronic ulcer. So we are converting it into the acute ulcer, which heals by primary intention without scarring, and it avoids the anal stenosis. Now the advantage of this fissurectomy, it is there is a rapid pain relief, a high healing rate, and there is no anal incontinence. But the disadvantage is that, see, this is the very large wound, and because of the large wound, it takes more time for the healing. Now the another procedure, that is called as a Lord's procedure, anal dilatation or stretching. So students, so here patient has given a spinal anesthesia, and after giving the spinal anesthesia, first per rectal examination is done. Then the fingers of each hand, 3 to 4 fingers of each hand, they are inserted into the anal canal. Once the fingers are inserted in the anal canal, they are distracted in opposite direction. So the strain is applied at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. See students, so once these are the fingers of the each hand. Once they are inserted, so the strain is applied. This is the 3 o'clock and this is the 9 o'clock. So strain is applied 3 and 9 o'clock, not at the 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock, because at the 6 o'clock and 12 o'clock the sphincter is weak, and that's why the pressure or strain is applied only at the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And by doing this, the sphincter is stretched and it leads to the relaxation of the sphincter in the postoperative period. But the students, nowadays this procedure is not recommended because there is an irregular tearing of the internal sphincter and leading to incontinence. So nowadays this procedure is not routinely done. So students, up till now what we have seen, the management of simple fissures, acute and chronic. Now the management of complicated fissures. So the complicated fissures are those that are associated other perianal diseases. Now fissures with Crohn's disease, fissures with tuberculosis, fissures with leukemia, and carcinoma of the anal canal with the fissure. So the students, these type of fissures, they require the management of the primary disease and the management of the fissures also. So students, with this we will conclude this topic of fissure in ano. So students, what we have seen? We have seen what is the fissure, that is the definition of the fissure. Then types of the fissures, acute and chronic, atypical and typical, locations of the fissures, anterior midline, posterior midline, lateral, and the typical and atypical means they are usually present at the anterior midline or posterior midline, and atypical fissures, they are usually present in the laterally. So whenever we examine the patient and if we found that the fissures are not in the midline, they are present in the laterally, then we should suspect that there is a something other disease, that is Crohn's disease, maybe tuberculosis, and maybe other diseases. So this should come in our mind whenever we examine this patient. There is a lateral fissure, we should think about these possibilities. If the fissures are in the anterior and posterior midline, no problem, but if they are laterally, then we should think of other possibilities. Then the treatment of the acute fissure and chronic fissure. So in acute fissure, so what we have done in the acute fissure, we have given conservative line of treatment, and by conservative line of treatment, majority of the fissures they heal. But the fissures which do not heal by conservative line of treatment, either they become chronic fissure. So then we have discussed how to differentiate between acute and chronic fissures and the treatment of the chronic fissures, surgical and non-surgical. So the students, I request all of you to go to the books and read the books, read this chapter, fissure in ano, and so that this will help you for the better understanding. Thank you students.